I'm joined now by Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell of California, who sits on the House Intelligence Committee, and Betsy Woodruff is politics reporter with the Daily Beast. Let me go with the congressman first. A lot of wiggle room there. First of all, whether he recuses himself or not, it sounds like he's not going to do it, no matter what this ethics board at the Justice Department has to say on the matter.
Too much wiggle room. And Chris, he's not going to recuse himself. He saw what happened to the last person who recused himself. That's why Congress should do all it can to take power away from the Attorney General when it comes to Bob Mueller and just pass legislation protecting Mueller. But if you take a step back, there is no shortage of lawyers in America. There's no shortage of conservative lawyers in America. Can't we find one who didn't meet with Donald Trump to potentially join the defense team against Mueller? And can't we find one who didn't send a unsolicited memo to the Justice Department about the illegitimacy of the Mueller probe? You know, Chris, he had some answers today that made me feel better, but his past actions and the president's intent here has me very concerned.
Well, don't you think you have to get somebody elected president before you can get... I mean, what this guy Barr made clear today is the President of the United States is the President of the United States. He's the Attorney General. He decides whether to recuse himself or not. He decides whether to release the Robert Mueller report or not in its fullness. I mean, wasn't it pretty clear today he was saying we've got the power, we've got the presidency, the Attorney General's office. That's the way it is. That's what I got from him today, didn't you? Yes,
and I don't trust Mr. Barr or the president's team with that power. They've proven that they're unworthy of it because of their poor judgment throughout this investigation. And again, going back to whether this report should be released or not, Chris, if the president had nothing to hide, he would just say, read every single word of the Mueller report, American people. I don't have anything to hide. Only somebody who had something to hide would even consider concealing the report's findings from the American people.
Do you think, John, we just had Bill Maher, and I know he's a comic by profession, but he's one smart analyst. Yeah. And you've been on the show, and he said today he doesn't have any reason to believe that Donald Trump will leave the presidency, will leave physically the White House if he's not reelected, or if he's impeached and convicted. He's not convinced that this president would abide by the Constitution. What's your view?
There's no way. He is a fighter through and through. That is one trait that I will give him credit for. I think he thinks he's above the law and he would never leave, which is the problem here. But we have to either impeach him in the Congress or impeach him at the ballot box. But he's not going out on his own.
Betsy, the same question is to you. I mean, it seems to me that William Barr created the headlines in tomorrow's papers already. He basically said, you know what, I'll decide how much to report, and I'll put it in my report, or I won't. I'll decide whether to recuse myself. Oh, by the way, I'm not going to recuse myself. I mean, he pretty much told the tough liberals and progressives on that committee, like Kamala Harris and Cory Booker, I'm the boss.
And I can tell you the president's legal team has had conversations about how they anticipate Bill Barr handling any potential future report from Mueller's team. One of the key questions for the president's lawyers, and they haven't seen the report, Mueller hasn't finished it yet, but one of the key questions for them is whether Mueller will include material in that report based on what White House staff told Mueller about their conversations with the president. That could be vital material to assessing whether Trump could have obstructed justice. However, if that material is in there, we can expect the president's lawyers to claim that it's covered by executive privilege.
Who makes the call on that?
Ultimately, Bill Barr is the one who's going to decide. And then, like, let's say Bill Barr says, I believe this material is covered by executive privilege, and he gives a redacted version or an edited version of the report to the Hill, then it's all but guaranteed that one of the members of Congress, likely a Congressman Nadler, who heads the House Judiciary Committee, will sue. He will issue a subpoena and sue to enforce the subpoena, and then it would be determined by the federal courts, which could take quite a long time.
Congressman, do you have the confidence that under the Constitution, the U.S. Congress, now controlled by Democrats in the House of Representatives, has the power to subpoena the full Mueller report when it comes out?
Yes, and I believe the U.S. v. Nixon ruling shows that the president cannot rely on executive privilege to shield himself from criminal liability or any conversations directing people to commit criminal acts. We're going to get it. It's just a matter of how soon.
Do you see it as the same situation? In other words, the president is basically a defendant in a criminal investigation?
Yes, I do, Chris. And again, I believe that if he had nothing to hide, he would not block the report from being released. He would not refuse to sit down with Mueller as Mueller seeks to, again, get more answers from him. And he would not pick an attorney general who has tried to already audition for the job by sending this unsolicited memo. He is acting at every step like somebody who wanted to work with the Russians and who has betrayed our country and put them first every single time.
But we know, and you're a student of this president as well as we all try to be, and not exactly happy students, but students. He was watching every moment today, every nanosecond of that hearing, sitting up there somewhere in the White House, studying all the channels, watching all the networks, Fox and everybody, how they're covering it. But basically, it's the same reality. He's kind of got up there who's saying things like, I won't fire the guy except for cause. He must be miserable because he thought he got another toady up there.
One of the challenges, I think, with making sense of and parsing Mr. Barr's testimony is that he's very smart. He's a talented lawyer. He's really sophisticated. He understands Washington. And this isn't his first rodeo. He's been through the congressional confirmation process before. And what we're seeing is very much testimony that is Barr doing what any nominee would do, which is trying to make it easy for senators to vote for him. But at the same time, we know he had conversations with the president about his legal challenges. We know the president all but certainly asked him about recusal, asked him about the Mueller probe. We can confidently surmise that those conversations happened, and that they didn't necessarily sound a whole lot like what Barr sounds like yesterday and like what he will sound like tomorrow.
Boy, did he look today like a congressman. He looked like a Washington Mandarin, a guy used to sharing, serving power, being in the midst of power, being surrounded by it and loving it. Anyway, Betsy, you're reporting.
We need someone who's going to stand up to power. That's what we need at this moment in our country's history.
Back to Betsy. You're reporting in the Daily Beast right now that the special counsel's office and federal prosecutors in Manhattan are scrutinizing a meeting involving former House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes, the one-time national security advisor Michael Flynn, and dozens of foreign officials. Why would the Republican chairman of the House Intelligence Committee be sitting in a group of politicians right before 2 days before the inauguration?
He hosted a breakfast along with Michael Flynn, who was poised to become national security advisor, and they invited a host of foreign dignitaries as well as a number of wealthy people,
Right.
It was these kinds of breakfasts are not in and of themselves.
Yeah, but this is the guy who did the midnight ride to come back with something he was going to give to the White House in the first place that he got from the White House.
This happened before that. This happened before Trump was in power. And the reason that Mueller is looking at it, that he's asked Flynn himself about this meeting, is because one of the big questions of the Mueller probe is, did foreign money move through intermediaries to the president's inaugural committee? And that's part of the question that Mueller is trying to answer by looking at this breakfast.
Okay, so Nunes could end up being a witness.
I don't want to speculate too far, but he certainly is someone who's on the special counsel's radar.
Congressman, let me ask you about this development of the weekend. It's a stunning thing to hear the President of the United States have to defend himself and saying, I'm not an agent of the Russians. We used to call them the Soviet Union. They're not the Soviet Union, but they're still the enemy in many ways. What does it make to you as an American to hear the President of the United States saying, I am not an agent of Russia?
Yeah, I am not a crook, right? We've heard that before as well. And it took him 2 days to say he wasn't after so much bad coverage. But where I come from, when you act on behalf of the Russians, when you encourage them to hack after it's revealed that they're hacking, when you take all the meetings that they offer, when you meet with their leader in secret, and then you take the notes from the one witness who has a record, and then you act again to take away sanctions, pull us out of Syria, you are working for the Russians. And I don't even think it's unwittingly. I think he knows exactly what he's doing.
Thank you so much, U.S. Congressman Eric Swalwell and Betsy Woodruff of the Daily Beast. Up next, fresh reporting today that Donald Trump has repeatedly discussed giving Vladimir Putin what he desires most of all, an American withdrawal from NATO and the virtual destruction of the military alliance built to keep Russia from grabbing Western Europe. This is frightening, and this is Hardball with the action.